The case of the disappearance of Yvonne Baldelli is a terrible story that began in 2011 in Panama. More precisely, it began in 2009 with the start of Yvonne's relationship with boyfriend Brian Brimmager, a former Marine. From the outside, it looked as if the girl had finally met her Mr. Big, or Prince Charming, and with the brightest expectations set out to start a new life with a man. In 2011, Yvonne and Brian come to Panama. They spend 2 months in Bocas del Toro, like in a fairy tale, dancing, having fun, taking pictures and basking in the sun. Later, witnesses of this period of the couple's life will appear and present an alternative version of what that cloudless-looking happiness looked like. The couple's plans were extensive. They wanted to start a sewing business together, dreamed of the future. The woman took 2 sewing machines and her beloved dog Georgia May with her when moving. But suddenly, at the end of 2011, Brian returns to the United States and answers all questions that he and Yvonne have broken up. And they broke up on her initiative. Allegedly, the woman met another man and decided to continue traveling with him. In parallel, Yvonne's relatives receive emails from her. In them, Yvonne assures her parents and sister that everything is wonderful, she is completely happy and really met another person with whom she decided to go to Costa Rica. It is worth mentioning that Yvonne was last seen in Panama on November 26, 2011. What about Brian? After his return home without Yvonne, he will soon marry a woman with whom he already has a child. When questioned by Yvonne's sister, Michelle Valenzuela, Brimmager confidently replies that the separation was provoked precisely by the disclosure of the fact of his paternity. Allegedly, Yvonne Baldelli reacted so violently to this news because she could not have children, and decided in a fit of feelings to leave her boyfriend. The version sounds somewhat plausible, but still, Yvonne's family declares her wanted in January 2012. Although letters continue to arrive to her relatives, their tone seems unusual to her sister. Doubts about her sister's behavior creep into her soul. The correspondent of the program, 48 Hours, covered this case for 5 years, from the search in the jungles of Panama to the investigation in Southern California. And, including with his help, we now know the stunning denouement of an international crime. As it turned out, Brian Brimmager proposed to his future wife Christine just a few days after Yvonne disappeared without a trace in Panama.
Hey, I'm not going to beat around the bush. You have to subscribe to the channel and like it so you don't miss new videos.
The evidence of his carelessness can be called wedding photos on the beach of La Jolla, and the general splendor of the wedding ceremony, and the happy, sincerely in love face of Kristen Brimmager. The correspondent decided to investigate the mysterious case from its origins. Arriving in Panama, he found out that the couple on the island of Carnero was quite well known. Since September 2011, they have managed to get acquainted with many local residents. Not least because Brim, as his former infantryman was nicknamed by new acquaintances, dreamed of becoming a singer, often performed in clubs and bars. The Crabtree couple, who own a bar on the waterfront where Brimmager often sang, confirmed that the couple looked in love. Penny Tom, the owner of another bar nearby, also confirmed this, but noted that Yvonne and Brian, firstly, were always positive, and secondly, had a habit of drinking a lot. Brim performed songs for free drinks and, it seems, the alcohol just flowed like a river. And this radically affected Brian's behavior. Peter Van Sant, the name of the correspondent who studied the case, continued to interview local residents, and it gradually became clear that Brimmager was prone to physical and verbal violence. One of the owners of a local bar, Jeff Saltzman, called him a terrible person, next to whom he himself felt danger. Saltzman also reported something more important. He said that he had repeatedly noticed signs of physical abuse on Yvonne's face. Bruises, black eyes, cuts. Of course, the girl tried to hide it with makeup and was clearly embarrassed by signs of violence. However, Jeff Saltzman testified that what was happening was quite obvious to him and others. She tried to hide it and not talk about it, he said. Later, the story about this will shock and upset Yvonne's parents terribly. After all, they thought all this time that their daughter was happy, her plans were coming true and she was completely safe. She looked very happy in the photos and really enjoyed life, said Yvonne's father Jim Faust. At the same time, in 2012, Yvonne's family actively joined the investigation. Letters from her sister continued to arrive, but the sensitive Michelle Valenzuela noted that she began to receive them much less often. Then the letters stopped altogether. Then Michelle received a message from Brimmager. He asked to pick up his truck. There was not a word about Yvonne in the message. Michelle was shocked by several things at once, both by the fact that Brian secretly returned to the USA, and by the fact that he did not mention her sister, and by the very object of his care, the truck. Michelle called back her sister's ex-boyfriend and, at the suggestion, pulled out a version of the breakup from him. He argued that Yvonne found out about his daughter from another woman, Kristen Verhoeven, and decided on a rapid breakup. When asked if Brian knows where Yvonne is now, whether she left a note, whether she tried to contact him after the breakup, Michelle received exclusively negative answers. Brimmager looked confident and calm. He assured the worried Michelle that he was sure Yvonne was fine. However, Michelle Valenzuela was not so easily confused. She reread her sister's letters and was finally convinced that their tone was unusual and suspicious. It just wasn't in Yvonne's nature to break up a relationship so quickly and disappear in an unknown direction. Then, at the beginning of January, a letter came from Yvonne again. She wrote that she was bored and intended to return to California soon. This letter was the last. Michelle's patience was overflowing, and she turned to her programmer cousin, asking him to check the IP addresses from which the emails that Yvonne allegedly sent from Panama and Costa Rica came. The discovery of the cousin was amazing. The letters allegedly sent from Costa Rica came from the USA, California, Dan Point. That is, from the place of residence of Brian Brimmager. The worst fears were confirmed. Yvonne's email account was hacked by Brimmager. He posed as her and wrote fake emails. Yvonne's mother and journalist Peter Van Sant agreed that Yvonne may no longer be alive. But there was still no direct evidence of Brimmager's guilt. Michelle Valenzuela could not delay any longer. She filed a statement with the FBI, providing all the available evidence. So Special Agent Andrew Masters took over Yvonne's case. It was not easy, because international relations were involved in it. The Embassy of Panama, upon request, provided information that there are no records that Yvonne ever left Panama. Moreover, there were no records of the woman's entry into Costa Rica. Yvonne's father, mother and sister went to Panama to find answers. There they turned to investigator Don Winner, a former American intelligence officer known for his impressive list of solved cases. The FBI set out to crack Brian Brimmager. The first. In a conversation with the relatives of the missing Winner said, "I think the chances of her hanging out somewhere in Costa Rica with another guy are practically zero." Winner's first step was that Jim Faust and Michelle Valenzuela would donate blood for DNA testing, in case remains will be found. The Panamanian police were then persuaded to hold a press conference asking for information. "Our family has been going through a nightmare for several months," Jim Faust addressed reporters, "and we call on everyone who knows anything about Yvonne's disappearance to respond." Panamanian police for the first time. She declared Brian Brimmager a suspect. Leaflets were printed and the family began their own search in the wilds of Panama. The area where the woman allegedly disappeared was very difficult: swamps, tropical jungles, impenetrable thickets and large areas flooded with water. Meanwhile, in the US, the FBI came face to face with Brimmager. Agent Andrew Masters noted the amazing calmness of the former infantryman when he invited them to his house. "I've been waiting for you," Brian said. The interrogation lasted about 4 o'clock. All this time, the man was babysitting his little daughter and showed no malice or signs of involvement in the murder. Brimmager's version was unchanged: "Yvonne simply left me for another man." But, faced with, Brimmager finally hesitated with the facts obtained during the investigation of email. The dialogue looked something like this: "Special Agent Masters, Brian, I'm just going to try to put it as it is. The IP addresses do not belong to Costa Rica or Panama. Brian Brimmager, okay. Special Agent Masters, they are registered here. Brian Brimmager, here. Special Agent Masters, okay, if she's not here, then there's someone here. Someone sent these emails, right? Brian Brimmager, do you know anyone who has her email inbox, hacked her account?" Special Agent Masters, "No." Then something caught Masters' attention. "As soon as I entered, I saw a white Sony Vaio laptop," the agent said, "and we knew that Yvonne had the same laptop that she took with her to Panama." Masters' premonition turned out to be correct. It was Yvonne's computer. But why was he in Brimmager's apartment? Even under the close surveillance of the FBI, Brian Brimmager remained a free man, living with his family on the outskirts of San Diego. Kristen worked, but Brimmager didn't, spending most of her time playing golf. A few months after that interview with the FBI, the 48 Hours program came face to face with the alleged killer. Journalist Van Sant asked direct questions to Brimmager: "Did you kill Yvonne Baldelli? Do you have anything to do with her disappearance?" Brimmager ignored Van Sant's questions. Then the FBI turned his whole life upside down, interrogating everyone who knew him, including his wife Kristen. It turned out that Brian had told Kristen that he was going to Panama to rest after leaving the Marines. At the same time, Kristen did not even know about the existence of Yvonne. He lied to both women quite calmly. And yet, according to Kristen, Brian is the best thing that has ever happened to her. Meanwhile, Special Agent Masters made several investigative trips to Panama and once again confirmed the stories of acquaintances about domestic violence. It turned out that there was not only a beating, but also strangulation, and dragging by the hair. After talking to friends and neighbors of Yvonne and Brimmager, Masters became convinced that the couple had a violent quarrel on November 26, 2011, after Yvonne found out that Brian had become the father of Kristen's child. The quarrel, Masters said, probably escalated into a fight. And at some point, Brian decided he was going to kill her. Crucial evidence was also found on Yvonne's laptop, the same computer Masters had seen when he first interrogated Brimmager. About 2 weeks before the murder, Yvonne took a disturbing selfie. The photo showed a huge bruise under his left eye and a swelling on his left cheek. The following query was also found in a Yahoo search engine: how to remove blood from a mattress. It was taken around 10:30 a.m. the night after Yvonne's murder. Even more evidence was found in Costa Rica, where Brimmager is seen withdrawing money from Yvonne's account. We were able to get photos near the ATM. So we see Brian using Yvonne's debit card to withdraw money from her account, Masters explained. It also became obvious to the agent that Georgia May, Yvonne's dog, was also killed by Brimmager. Otherwise, she would be running around unattended, and this would arouse suspicion. Brimmager remained silent all this time. The key evidence was found on Brimmager's Facebook page, where he was selling a machete. Brimmager made a comment about this knife. He said, "Yes, he was mine once. I brought it with me when I came from the States. I only used it to stab one stripper." Masters managed to track down the man who bought the machete from Brimmager in Panama. It is very heavy and weighty, they can cause dangerous injuries. The investigators had a machete, they had an email, and they caught Brimmager in a lie. But there was no most important clue. In the summer of 2013, almost 2 years have passed since the disappearance of Yvonne Baldelli. On June 26 of that year, FBI Special Agent Andrew Masters handcuffed Brian Brimmager. He was charged with 13 felonies related to the concealment of the death of Yvonne Baldelli, but not murder. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Shane Harrigan and Mark Conover were the lead prosecutors. At that point, without a body, Harrigan told reporters, "We didn't have sufficient grounds for a murder charge." Very soon everything changed. A local Panamanian worker cleaning bushes on the island where Brimmager and Yvonne lived came across a duffel bag with skeletal remains. A DNA test confirmed that it was Yvonne. The remains were found just a few hundred yards from where her family had spent several days searching. The autopsy confirmed the horrific fact that Yvonne's body was butchered with a machete. The most likely cause of death was stabbing at least 2 times in the back. Despite the huge amount of evidence that Brimmager repeatedly lied, his wife, Kristen, continued to support him. In the spring of 2014, Yvonne's family suffered another cruel tragedy. Michelle Valenzuela, who dedicated her life to getting justice for her sister, faced another mortal enemy. She was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. "I'm still alive to fight for my life, and I'm still alive to fight for my sister," she said at the time. In September 2014, Valenzuela, weakened by cancer, the most important witness, agreed to testify. Brian Brimmager was sitting right across from her. After an exhausting testimony, the woman lost consciousness. It was an impressive act of sisterly love. A few days later, Michelle died. It took months of diplomatic and legal wrangling, but in early 2015, the Panamanian government finally agreed to have Brimmager tried for murder on American soil. We have come to the conclusion that the only way for Brian Brimmager to face justice for the murder he committed is to charge him and convict him here in the United States, Assistant U.S. Attorney Mark Conover said. Brimmager has pleaded not guilty. The case went to trial in 2016, when investigators made another crucial discovery. Yvonne's blood and DNA were found under the handle of the machete. The former Marine carefully cleaned the blade, but not the space under the handle. And only these additional clues, after almost 5 years of lying, forced him to plead guilty to second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 26 years in federal prison. Kristen and Brian Brimiger are still married. She continues to support and visit him in federal prison. Brimiger's sentence ends in February 2037.